The journalism has changed beyond belief in my lifetime. So I barely can understand where journalism is now.
So I've heard that you don't carry cell phones. Is it true? Is it true? And how is it even possible? आज आइडियाज ऑफ इंडिया के मंच में हमारे साथ है पीको अय्यर, जो कि एक बहुत वेल नोन ऑथर है, जर्नलिस्ट रह चुके हैं, ट्रैवल्स के ऊपर किताबें लिखते हैं. सो वेलकम ऑन ABP लाइव. एंड बिकॉज वी आर स्टैंडिंग इन फ्रंट ऑफ आइडियाज ऑफ इंडिया, वी हैव दिस होल समिट टुडे. आई वांट टू नो व्हाट इज योर आइडिया ऑफ इंडिया.
My idea of India is energy, stimulation, color, vibrancy, and an engagement with ideas and words that I don't find anywhere else. I've been traveling the world constantly for 50 years. And whenever I come to India, like today, I just feel people who engage with issues and debate and questions like nowhere else. And I think my neighbors in the United States would be envious if they could be here today for the Ideas of India conference.
Okay, so you are an author and obviously you write stories, you write about travel. So idea is the main essence or the ingredient of writing any story or telling any story. I want to know that where do authors get ideas from? When do they get these ideas?
There's no rule. And the ideas come from nowhere, unexpectedly. And I think it's when you start writing and you make an idea, this is what I want to write. And as you're writing, a better idea comes. And suddenly the piece or the book takes an entirely different direction. So I think the hope of any writer is to be surprised by the writing and to find that his or her initial notion is completely upended and something much richer and more unexpected takes over.
Okay, so you have also been a journalist. I want to know that where do you see the level of journalism after like 5 years down the line?
The journalism has changed beyond belief in my lifetime. So I barely can understand where journalism is now because I grew up in the age of print journalism. But I think as long as the capacity to question, to debate, and to engage with real issues is alive, it doesn't matter what medium or what form it takes. It's the content that really drives it. And again, I find in India, the conversations I have are much richer than in most other places. So I think in that sense, journalism, the life of the mind, the life of inquiry are really alive and well here.
So do they respect Indian journalism overseas?
Do I?
Do they respect Indian journalism overseas? Like you have always been living out of
Yes,
India.
I
so
have.
I want to know that what is the perception of people who are living in foreign countries? What perceptions do they have about Indian journalism, about Indians?
Such a good question. They don't know enough about Indian journalism.
Oh, really?
Yes. But when I, for example, look at a news magazine, I used to work for Time magazine in New York.
Yeah, correct.
I think the Indian news magazines are extremely high level. When I bring out a book, the reviews I receive in India are much more thoughtful and literate and sophisticated than I get anywhere else in the world. But in terms of people's perceptions of India, it's interesting how quickly they've changed. I recently met somebody in California, and they said, I heard that there's poverty in India. I'm so surprised because every Indian I meet in America is so rich. They're all CEOs or they're working in Silicon Valley or doctors very often, very, very successful people. So I'm glad if some of the old stereotypes about India are being replaced. Sometimes they're replaced by new stereotypes, but nonetheless, I think more and more people know that India is really one of the most intelligent and sophisticated and richest places on earth. And so many of my Western friends, of course, now come here to get married or to have their honeymoons in India. So that's a good development.
Okay, so I've heard that you don't carry cell phones. Is it true? Is it true? And how is it even possible?
It's hard to believe that somebody
It's very hard
travels
to
all the
believe,
time and a journalist who
How
doesn't
do you
have...
communicate?
So I was telling somebody earlier today, the secret of not having a cell phone is having a very patient wife. I feel really sorry for my wife.
Our wife's patient. I have a question. Our wife's patient.
So here I am in Mumbai, and I feel sad for my wife that she can't reach me. She doesn't know where I am. But she said wonderfully, she's Japanese, oh, if you had a cell phone, you wouldn't be the person I married. So as long as she will tolerate it, I'm lucky. I don't recommend this to anybody else, but I don't have small children. I don't have aged parents, and I don't have the kind of job that requires a cell phone. And what I do find is I have too much data and distraction in my life already. What I don't have is the time and space to make sense of it. And as I'm sitting here talking to you, I don't want something vibrating in my pocket.
Yeah, my phone was just now vibrating.
There we go, exactly. And I don't want my attention to be cut into pieces.
Correct.
My definition of happiness is absorption. I'm most happy, I forget the time, I forget where I am, I'm deep in a concert or a conversation or whatever. And anything that takes me out of it is an enemy. And so the cell phone I see as an intruder less. Of course, it's a great convenience, but I'm prepared to give up the convenience in order to give myself entirely to what's around me.
Today, the generation, like the youth of all over the country, all over the world, are so much inclined towards the technology, towards AI, towards social media. Where do you see this young generation heading towards?
I think they're very fortunate. Technology has made so many wonderful things possible. It allows me to live in Japan, even though my bosses are in New York. I could never do that without technology. But technology, the one thing technology hasn't given us is a sense of how to make wise and discerning use of technology. And to do that, we have to go within ourselves to make sure we are not the servant of our tools.
Okay. So I would like to also tell my audience that Pico Iyer has already felt the pain of California fire like 30 years ago.
That's right. Yes.
30 years ago,
Yes.
your house got burnt in
Yes.
front of your eyes.
Yes.
Could you
Yes.
please share what you went through? What was the feeling? It's very miserable right now. Also, we are looking at people. The pictures are coming from California, and we are so sad about whatever things are happening. Could you please tell me what all happened that day?
Thank you. It's very, very shocking.
Yeah.
I was in my family home and I saw a very distant fire. And the next thing I knew, it encircled my home. And as you said, I was stuck in the middle of it for 3 hours. And in some ways, because I was stuck in the middle, I was so grateful I didn't lose my life.
Yeah.
I didn't mind losing my possessions. And it was much harder for my mother, who was away visiting a nephew. And she just received a phone call from me later that evening saying, by the way, you've lost everything in the world. And she felt so powerless. No, there must be something. But I said, no, everything is ash. So for her, just hearing about it is much worse than for me, who had the emotion of going through it and also seeing that there was nothing that could possibly be recovered from the force of that fury. The other reason in which I was quite fortunate was I was 33 at the time. So it's relatively easy to start your life anew.
Correct.
My mother was 59, and at that point it's really hard to conceive starting anew. And everything she loved in the world, all her photos, all her mementos, every memory she had
All
of
the
her
memories,
husband,
correct.
gone. Yeah.
So it was quite distressing and everything. Like we are, as I told you, we are looking back to the pictures, we are listening to people's cry and everything, and it's very, what do I say? I have no words. Okay, but moving on, I would also like to tell my audience that you write stories on travel and etc. Yeah, and a lot of travelers must be watching this session, and I would want you to suggest us some very beautiful places to visit before all of us die.
Well, so many places just in India.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
example,
I'm sure. So, because you're talking about India, India is a must visit place. Like before dying, everybody should visit India.
Yes.
This is my suggestion. I'm talking apart from
all right.
India.
Because I was also thinking within India. For example, Ladakh is
Yeah.
one of the most beautiful places I've ever
Yeah,
been in.
and now people are very much fond of Ladakh. Like
Yes,
now the trend has come where
yes.
people are very aware like what Ladakh is, how to live there, and they're very eager to
Yes.
go and visit there.
Good.
Please.
Or Srinagar, for example, or so many places. Outside India, I would recommend Tibet. Not so far away. And it's, of course, so many Tibetans in India now. And it's good for Indians to get to see the most uplifting place. So my definition of a good travel journey is one that sends you home a different person. And I think anyone who goes to Tibet will come home thinking differently, transformed. I love Cuba.
Oh.
And I think anyone who's in Mumbai, say, will recognize Havana instantly. It looks very similar. It's got the sea right next to it. It's got the same spirit and energy, but in a very different kind of tone, obviously, and context. And then come to Japan, which is the place I've chosen to live, that on the surface is the opposite of India. Silent, very orderly, extremely obedient, but underneath that, maybe not so different from India in its traditional Asian values.
So have you visited India? You have been through Indian states and you have roamed around. What part did you like the most?
I can't say what I liked most, but so many places in India. I've never lived here, but as you say, I've come
travel,
often as a
you
visitor.
travel,
Varanasi made a very big impression on me. I used to spend every spring in Dharamshala, living across from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and of course that's almost a part of Tibet as much as India, but it's a very beautiful part of Tibet. All my roots are here in Mumbai. Both my parents grew up here, so my uncles and aunts and cousins are here. So it's been close to my heart ever since I was a teenager. My big deficiency is, despite the name Iyer, I've only spent one day of my life in South India. So that's what I need to explore. I spent one day in Tamil Nadu. I've never been to Kerala. So I'm planning to amend that next year and finally go to South
I
India.
hope a very best of luck for that, because South India is very beautiful. I have been there and I am a huge fan of South India. Thank you so much, Pico sir, for being on ABP Live with us and sharing your experience of Ideas of India. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a delight to be here and delight to be part of the Ideas of India 4.0.
Thank you.